you create a simple database and how can you store data into the database. So just to summarize with the introduction which we started in the previous session. So, so first let's just create this project so that we'll have something up and running. Let be example.com. Next, empty activity. Yes. Okay. Let this be creating. Let this process run in the background. Just go ahead. Okay. So we'll be starting with data storage. So these are the different types of data storage, persistent types of data storage that we use in our Android devices in order to store some data. So as we were discussing shared preference, we will be going through it in the next session. For now, just remember that it's an XML file wherein all the data will be stored in some key and value pair. And the next one is like internal and external storage. These are like just creates a file and just dumps data into a file. That's all. There is no organized way of doing it. It's just a file. File is created and you just write into the file or read from the file. So that's what is the internal and external storage does. And you have the SQLite database, which we'll be learning right now. And the last type is the data storage, where you can store some content in the cloud and retrieve it from the cloud or retrieve it from the server. So these things. And now coming back, so this is like a brief explanation about what are the different types of different types of variables, or also called as variable types, which are supported in SQLite database. So it's like we have null and we have integers, we have the real numbers, and we have the text, that is basically for storing some kind of string or anything. You can use this text. And you have blob, and blob is used to store any kind of object as it is. So if it is like you want to store an object value as it is, like an object, you can store it inside the blob. But this is just for now storing such things, like might be an image or might be some other kind of like a simple file in order to store it in the database. So all these things can be stored in the in the database. So the difference between the SQL database, the MySQL database, and this one, or your normal typical SQL database, is like this is very lightweighted. And in terms of the storage types that you have, there you had like date and all those things. So you can just actually create a date type there. But here you cannot create a date and all. Date has to be stored as a string. And yes, we started with how to create a table and how to create the database first, and then how to create the table in the previous session. So I think we did write this part in our previous session itself. So let me just grab the same example itself so that it will be easier for you to understand. Oops. Okay, desktop and database. Okay, let me just quickly grab this database, this example itself. So this is something that we wrote in our previous session. So this is the program that we started in our previous session. So what we did is like we should have an SQLite Open Helper class. So that is basically the DB helper, which extends the SQLite Open Helper class. And now this Open Helper class is something which helps us in creating the tables and inserting the values into the tables, and all those things can be done using this Open Helper class itself. So here we must override two methods, the onCreate method and the onUpgrade method. So basically the onCreate method is used to create the table, and the onUpgrade is a method which is used to alter the table. So basically might be like columns in the table, altering of columns, and I mean, for adding another row or for deleting a row or anything with respect to the table, you can just do it with the create table method that you have. And now, sorry, not create table, on upgrade. I'm really sorry. So create table is used to create the table, and this one is used to alter the table. Now, if somebody creates an object for this particular class, so since we have done the same thing here, so this will execute this thing and then create the table and create the first it creates a DB once it's now constructor is called. So basically you are creating the object, thereby you're calling the constructor also. So once you call the constructor, the super class super class constructor is basically SQLite open helper class constructor will be called. Therein you'll be passing the database name and database version here. So once you pass the database name and database version first time, and for the next time, in the next instance, it will just execute the create table method in order to create a table with the following contents. So these things are these are something where you have, you'll get the columns for these things. Now, so we'll just generalize these columns before inserting and before learning how to insert and all those things. So I'll just generalize this way so that I can use the student name and I can use this ID and I can use this name and phone number columns wherever I want without having to, again look into the spellings and to check all these things. So what I'll do is I'll just break these statements into parts. So here I have student. Okay, here I have student. So I'll just cut this and I'll create a column called as name here. Okay. Let me just create a student underscore table. So I have a table called a student underscore table. Oops, I'm sorry, this is not the name. This is going to be this is not the column name, it's going to be the table name. Table name. And here we have the ID. So we need to generalize this ID also. So in order to do that, I would just generalize it. But before generalizing it, please make sure that you have the necessary spaces given here. So I have a single space and I have a single space here. And I need to add the ID here. So I'll call it as column underscore ID. Okay, I'll create ID. So ID is done. The next thing is I need to create a name. Again, even here, if you may just make sure here, you have a small space here given, and I'll add the column name here. So why I'm doing this, if you have a question like why are you doing this, was the previous methods not sufficient? So why I'm making this is in order to avoid the student table. So you don't have to remember what is the table name, all those things. You can just use this variable names in order to avoid some confusion and make everything at a single place so that you can access it anytime you want. So even the column name called as phone number, making the same way. So I'll call it as column underscore phone. Okay. So we have created something like this. Now this is done. So once somebody executes this execute SQL. I mean, somebody calls this method called execute SQL statement and just passes the query here. You see here. So create table is a query that you have written. So if somebody passes this query, now that query will be executed. Once the query is executed, the table will get created with the following columns. With this name, with the following columns like column ID, column name, column phone number. Now we have done with the create table method. So our next step is to insert some kind of values into that particular table with respect to column step. How can we do that? So we'll learn the onUpdate method a little later. So here we'll just come to inserting a record. How do we insert a record? So basically this is done for a contact. So we'll just do the same thing for a student. Now what we need to do is, first thing is, if you're inserting, you need to get the right permissions in order to write into the database. That's the first and foremost thing that you need to do. If you're writing it, open it in the write mode. If you're reading it, open it in the read mode. And once you finish with writing, close your writing connection here. So this should be done in order to avoid some kind of leaks, or you can also call it like we should not give away some XYZ variable in order to alter your table contents in order, like if you keep your database open in the right mode. So make sure that every time you open the database connection with the write mode or read mode, just make sure that you close it. All your connections are secure. That is, all your connections are closed. And if you ask me a question like, if I don't write this line, will my program give me an error? So that's something you might ask. Like, no, the answer is no. Your program doesn't give you any errors. The program will get executed. But as a practice, make sure that you close the connection so that in order to secure your database. Secure database in the sense there are many parameters from which your database can be modified or manipulated. So it should not be prone to all these things. So in order to do that, you can close the connections. So first thing is open it and then close it at necessary states that you have. And after that, you create something called as content values. Now, content values is basically a parameter which will insert things, that is, which will insert the data components into a specific row. So what do if you ask me a question like, what does that mean? So you don't have to you will pass on the name and you'll pass on the ID, or you'll just pass on the phone number. But what happens is, where this name has to be inserted, where this phone number has to be inserted, where the ID has to be inserted. For example, let's just consider something like this. This is your table, and your table consists of 3 columns. It consists of 3 columns. Like, assume that you just provide some data component right now. That is, you want to insert something here. So you have 3 columns where you will insert data. This is ID, this is name, and this is phone number. So you have 3 things. Now, where should your data component be inserted? So this is ID, and this is name. So here this is name, and the next thing will be phone. So these are few things, like you need to know where these things has to be inserted. Now only when you know that where these things needs to be inserted, you can just do it. So for that purpose, what we have is we have something called as content values. So this is basically some kind of, you know, I'm sorry. Your content values is basically a class which helps you in taking the data component and mapping that data component to a particular row. So that's basically like to which row this, to which column this element has to be inserted. Like if you just give name, and where should that name column go and sit, or where should your phone number go and sit. So those things will be specified by the content values object that you have. And so you'll create a content values object, and for the content values object you will just tell. So you get the name, so name has to be inserted inside column underscore name, and phone number has to be inserted under column underscore phone. So just tell everything to content values, and then you call the method called as db.insert. So you have opened the database connection with the writable mode here. So you just tell db.insert, and you tell in which table this things has to be inserted. So this things has to be inserted in student table. So you just tell student table name, and the second parameter should be null, and the third one you just pass on this values directly here. Is that clear?
The key underscore name in values.put. So key
Sorry?
is it okay, the next line to contents value. So you have values.put, right? So keys underscore name. So is key underscore is a prefix that we need to add to our ID as well. So
it's this key name is basically your column name.
Okay,
so
in our case
it
you
will
put the
not be
ID,
key.
right?
Yes, column ID, column name, column phone number.
Okay, and anyways we have that object. Okay.
Yes. And now what we do is we don't have anything like to insert by default. So we need to create our insert methods. So let me just create some insert methods here. Call it as public. So it's not going to return anything. So I'll just make it as void. Insert student. So insert student is a method that I've created. So assume that. And now one more thing is this ID which you see. So the ID component that you see here. So this ID you need not insert it manually. You need not insert it manually. Why I'm telling is because so this ID will be automatically incremented since you have given the ID parameter as primary key. Integer and primary key. You don't have to insert it manually. It will just auto increment. So the first row will be 1, second row will be 2, third row will be 3. No two rows will have the same ID. So it will be automatically incremented by your insert object, that is your content values is going to insert, and thereby you're calling that insert method. So we'll just see here, like we'll get directly the name to be inserted, and I'll just tell string phone. So insert student, string name, and string phone. So if somebody calls this method and passes the name and phone number, it would insert the name and phone number with the ID automatically incremented to this particular table. Now we'll see what happens. So first thing is we need to have a database object, which we don't have. So let's just create SQLite database object. We'll call it as MSQL database, and let me initialize this with the writable object here. So I'll just tell this dot get writable database. Now I have got the writable database. So what I'll do is the next step, I'll prepare all my rows to be inserted. So for that, I'll just create content values equal to new content values. Then values dot put, and the next one, first object would be key, second would be value. So key is basically in which column it needs to be inserted. So key is going to be column underscore name. That is what we have given as the column name here, and the value will be name. So that we have got here. Guys, I think somebody has unmuted. Can you just mute it? Just hearing the voice again. Thank you. And
Ranjit,
yeah.
what is the function of ID column here? If we remove the ID column from the table,
You're not removing the ID column here. Hello?
I mean the
Whoever asked
ID
this
column.
question,
What
I'm just
is the function of this ID column? I mean, is it possible to remove this ID column and just making a table with only the name column and the phone number column?
you can make it only name and phone number, but a single data has to have, a database table has to have a primary key. Then you can make the name as primary key, but there cannot be like no two rows with the same name.
No, the phone number will be the primary key. No, the phone number will be unique.
You can make it like whatever you want as the primary key, you can make it. So this, since this is an example, I'm just giving something called as an ID. I'm just adding an additional parameter called as ID here. That's all.
Okay. Okay.
Hello.
Yeah. Okay.
Hello.
Yeah. Somebody is talking. Yep. Go ahead, please.
Yes, sir. We use this access identifier here, private
Sorry?
static string that we are identifying the table.
So I'm really sorry. I didn't get your question.
Sir, I want to know that why we use this keyword private here. Can't we use this public static?
Keyword private here is what your
Yes.
question is, right?
Yes, sir.
See, the primary intention is I don't want to expose this this variable called as db name, db version, and all these things to whoever is outside this class. That is the only reason why I've used private. If I make it public, then somebody from outside, somebody in the sense, any other your database object that you have created, this main activity can access the database table name, these variables basically. I don't want the object which is has to access it. That is the only reason why I've given it as private.
Okay. Thanks.
So I'll just insert name, phone number here, and ID, as we were discussing, this is like auto increment. So automatically ID will be incremented. But as one of our friends said that we can make phone number as primary key. Yes, you can make the phone number as primary key. So then what happens is no two rows should have the same phone number. That's it. But you can make phone number as primary key. So now we have made this particular column ready. So we have this single column ready, single row ready by telling like where this things has to be inserted and what has to be inserted and all these things. And now what we do is I'll just tell SQLite Database dot, I'll just call the insert function, and in the insert function we have the table name, null column hack, and values. So table name will basically be the table name itself, and null column hack is basically like what happens if your single column is null, or whether you want to place something as null in that particular column. So now a row cannot be like null. So your primary key, your name, phone number, there cannot be a row which has all these things as null. But using your null column hack, what you can make is all three as null if you want, just like a placeholder kind of thing. So just keep a row here so that you can insert the values a little later. So those things can be done, but right now we are not using the null column hat, so I'm just passing the value as null itself. And the third element has to be like, what are the elements which needs to be inserted into the database. So I'll pass on the values object to here. So this values object is something which consists of where these things has to be inserted. And now once I do this, a single row of data will be inserted into the database. And yes, I've inserted my task for, basically this particular method's task is complete. So let me just close the connection. So I'll just tell SQLite Database dot close. So if you just call the dot close method, then the SQLite database will be closed. Database connection will be closed, and there'll be security for your database. Now nobody is calling this insert student method. Who should call? So from my activity, I'll be calling. So I'll just tell db helper dot insert student, and I shall just give some values here. Okay, I'll just insert it. Now every time I open this application, a single row of data like this will be inserted. Now let me just run this app on the emulator, and we'll see like what happens. Okay, so let this execute right now. In the meanwhile, let's just see another tool. It's an open source tool. It's not necessary that you need to have this tool itself, but it'll be good if you have this tool.
Rajit, I have a question.
Yes.
See, we make a database, right? It is in our application, and the database is in public domain, na? Like you can access the database from other classes also.
Other classes also, in the sense I didn't get you.
Like you make a big application, right? And the way you insert is, you mentioned that in the class file you make the parameters in a what do you say, protected, or sorry, what is? Can you go to that file?
Okay. Yeah. 1 second. I'll just open. Yeah, tell me.
Yeah, here you mentioned it is protected. Means in the application, these you cannot access from your application from other class files. This is what we are doing right now.
So other class files, in the sense, I'm sorry, I didn't get your question.
Like public class, DB helper, extends SQL open helper.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
There you are putting the parameters like DB name, student, version, so that these variables we cannot access from the other part of the other different class files. This is what we are doing, right?
Yes.
My question is, the table which is there, you can access the table from other external class files, na? How you protect the table access in that rows?
So this is basically have you,
my question?
I think you would have gone through the sessions on Java, right?
Yes.
Okay. So during Java, there is a concept called as encapsulation.
Yeah, okay, that I understood. That you cannot get these values like a student or DB name, you cannot access it from other classes.
So the same concept of encapsulation is applied here. You cannot access it directly, but you can access it through a public method. So basically, insert student is a public method which wraps up or which binds this private data.
Okay.
Which binds this private data and will provide you the access, not a direct access, but only this insert student can access this name, phone number, and all these things, and then do something here. But it's not like you can directly access the value of this particular thing.
Yes.
So if you see
question
here,
is, table exist, na? I can open the table from other part of the application.
Yes, you can
Okay.
open a table from other part of the same application, not from the
Okay.
other application.
Okay, okay, okay. So it is not that way they can protect it.
Yes.
Understand? Okay.
Ranjit, I have a question here.
Please.
For the table where when we are inserting values, we are not assigning any values for the first column, and it's our primary key.
Okay. Yes.
So how table will handle it? I mean, every time it will assign a unique ID. I mean, it will start from 1, 2, 3, and so on.
Yes. It starts from 1. Yes.
How this is handled in the database? I mean,
So it is handled with the internal SQLite database setup, which is present in the Android system. So you don't have to
okay,
install or do anything, any external setup in order to configure your database. The database is already configured in the Android system. So that SQLite database, which is present inside the Android system, will handle. So basically, your insert methods that you have. So your create table, execute SQL, and insert. So all these methods are basically internally handled from the uh, SQLite database classes, which is present in the Android system itself.
okay.
Hey, about the null hack. So is it for the whole row? It says that you can have you cannot
Yes.
have null values, or is it for
Yes.
one single property?
It's for the whole row.
For the whole row, single property we can have null value for phone, right?
Yes, yes, you can have.
It has
You
nothing
can
to
have
do.
a single null value for. You can insert a name, and you can insert. ID is primary key. It has to be obviously inserted. And for a single ones, if you don't provide the value, it will be determined as null.
So where the whole row has to be null? I mean, in which scenario we would need such a requirement wherein we can allow a null insertion of row or values?
It depends on the use cases, but some point of time wherein you don't get a value at a given instance of time, but still you want a placeholder kind of thing for that particular value or that particular row. So there you would require the null column hack. Is
Oh,
that
no,
right?
I mean, I didn't really get the scenario wherein you would have such a need. Um,
Okay.
any scenario wherein we can have such kind of needs for which we have this hack.
So it's basically like you have some kind of calculation which is going on, and some kind there are like 2 or 3 different threads which are running, which are fetching some data and then inserting into the table. And later you want a specific row to be inserted in that particular placeholder. So then you can just insert it in that particular place after your operation is done or something like that.
But ID would be there, right?
The ID, yes, you can. The entire row can be null if the null column hack is there.
The whole
If you
thing, the
want the
ID is
ID,
also.
you don't want. You don't. If you want just the ID and the other two can be null, then you can just use it. So ID is basically in my case in this application. I have the ID. So
No, no.
might be.
Anyway, see, ID is for me. ID is something unique identifier. So it can be phone number. It can be anything. In this case, it is ID. So that is
Yes.
okay. But my question is, in this null hack thing, whatever scenario comes, so you're saying the whole row will be null, inclusive
Yes.
of the ID,
Yes.
unique, right? Unique
Yes.
ID
Yes.
also not having any value, right?
Yes. Unique ID will also not have any kind of value.
Okay. Okay. Fine.
Okay. So.
Ranjit, I have one question.
Yep.
You have given here this .get writable database, right?
Yes.
Um, This means that I have only one database for my application, right?
Yes, you have one database for your application. That is basically this database that you have, but you can have
Yeah.
multiple columns.
No, can I
So
have
sorry,
multiple?
multiple tables.
No, can I have multiple databases? What I'm asking. That's my question.
So multiple database is a limitation in the SQLite database.
Yeah, SQLite database, but can I have multiple database and
No,
is
that's a
it?
limitation. That's a limitation.
Oh, it's only one, is it?
Yes, but you
Oh,
have several other party databases which are coming in for Android. But this is
no.
something which is native in Android.
Okay, okay, okay then. Yeah.
I think, yep, yeah, we have just executed this. Now we'll just see where exactly is this database created. So a simple, UI, we don't have anything on the UI right now. So where exactly do we find this database? For that, we can use the tools which are given by Android Studio itself. And where can we find it? So basically, we have something called as device monitor. That is Android device monitor. Just open this. So which will give you the entire states, entire stats about or entire status about like what is there and what you can have inside the database and what is basically present inside your phone. Everything will be present or everything will be given by this device monitor. So I've just opened device monitor. Just give you the list of devices. So if you have plenty of devices, it'll just list down all the devices here. And excuse me. So here I have only one device. I'll just open this device. And these are the apps which are basically present on my emulator. So now I'll come to this File Explorer option. And under File Explorer, you have all these things. So you find something called as data. Now under data, you can find again one more thing called as data. Now under this, you'll find your package name, basically your base package name. So if you want, you can just go down here. So this is the base package name which I have. So okay, let me go here. So this is my com dot. Okay, this is my base package name which I have. So under this, I'll have the databases. Oops, I have in the same emulator itself. I have the same package name installed multiple times. So that's the reason why I have multiple databases here. So not to confuse you, let me just close this one and create a new one. Like why I'm doing this is because I have the same applications package name installed multiple times with multiple databases created there. That's the reason. That's the only reason why I'm just doing this. Other than that, everything else is fine. So 5x. Okay. Next. Marshmallow. Right now. Okay, just tell for DB. Here I have. Let me start this. Again, I'm repeating why I'm just creating a new database, new emulator is because I had installed the same package named application like multiple times in the same device. That's the reason why I had multiple databases in that particular folder. Okay, it's just creating and then starting. And before that, anyone having any other questions? We'll take another 2 minutes to start it.
You opened the hello.
Yeah.
You opened the DVD, right?
Yes.
And you went into File Explorer. Today, I just went through everything, but I couldn't access the folder data.
If you have connected your physical device and then you are trying to access it, then you'll not be able to access it.
No, even in the emulator, it didn't actually. So
The emulator, is it?
yeah, it didn't. I went through the browser, I mean Google search. They said you have to open through root and all. So I just stopped it after that.
No, that procedure is only if you have the physical device. I mean, physical device, the same thing will not apply, basically, because it's a matter of data security. So anybody just plugs into your device, then checks out like what it is and all those things. You will not be able to get the data from your physical device, basically. But your emulator, yes, it is definitely accessible. I'll just show you the example of a physical device also. What happens in case of the physical device. So let me just connect my own device right now.
Yeah, Ranjit, I have
Yeah, please.
I have created an app with this database, but I just now checked in my device where I have installed this app. I could not find this database, actually, physical database.
In your physical device,
Uh,
no, you won't find it.
okay,
It'll be
but
there,
but
but it's not good.
what for other apps? Say for WhatsApp, WhatsApp, I found that there is a folder called WhatsApp, and I found a folder inside that folder. I mean, a main folder that data there is data and database in that same
Yes.
folder.
So
So
WhatsApp is basically storing the data in the SD card.
is
It
okay.
will be storing the data in the SD card. Basically, even if your phone doesn't have SD card, it will be called as internal memory. Even if it is internal memory, it is determined as an SD card. So the secondary storage that you have is called as the SD card itself. Even on your phone, which has the internal memory, and there, WhatsApp will store all these things like your images, your media, databases, all these things. But those are basically like the backup files will be. So if you just see here, this is my physical, I think yes, I've connected my physical device. This is my physical device and I have opened the file explorer. And if I click on data, nothing opens. If you just check like, so these are something which are accessible commonly. So if you see here, my data folder, nothing is accessible. Dev folder, nothing is accessible. The firmware folder, nothing is accessible. So this is basically in order to protect your device, that's all. So if you see a storage emulated, so these things, even these things are not accessible basically because in order to access these things, I mean, if you ask me a question like, can we access these things? Yes, you can access it, but the phone has to be rooted. Only if your phone is rooted, then you have the access to all these things. If not, no, you don't have access to all these things. But your emulator, anytime you have the access.
Okay, so how can we make a backup of our database? I mean, if we need to make a periodic backup for my database, like just like WhatsApp does.
Okay. You could just take the whatever database you have programmatically, you have the access to database. So you take a snapshot of that database and then you store it on the SD card. You can manually take it and then store it on the SD card. That option you have programmatically, but that is your app should support that feature. It's not like some third party person is coming and accessing into your app's database. That is, if this is the app that I'm creating, tomorrow you create one more app telling that this is the app that I have. So I want the contents of this app to be snapshot into the other things. That will not be possible. So your app can take a snapshot. That is, your app can just take a copy of the database or the contents of the database in your application and create a database or just create a file basically. Like whatever file you want, you can just create or export it and then put it on the SD card. That can
Okay,
be done.
can you just show us one example?
Example of creating a snapshot of that.
Yeah, taking a backup of my database.
It's going to take really long time. We have to write the entire code for that. But I can show you like how to take basically how to, how does your database really looks and how can you access database on an emulator.
Okay, but
This is what I'm just doing right
if
now.
you can share us the code over mail. so we can check it, and if we have any doubt, then we can just ask you.
Okay, cool. I don't have the. I have to send it to you. Probably like I get some time. I just create it and then.
Okay, Ramesh, thank you.
Rachit, when you said you have to root your external device, phone, you said routing will help.
Yes.
How do we do that?
You have basically you have tools to do that. I mean, you just go and I mean put a model number and you basically get a file download, a zip file download for it. So you have to use that file and then you have to root your phone. So basically before rooting your phone, you need to take a backup of your phone because there might be a situation your phone's data might get erased. So just take a backup of your data and then you can just do it.
What is actually routing?
Routing is basically giving you the root access. So root in the sense you have the base folder in the Linux file system, basically your base folder.
Okay.
Giving access to your base folder, that's how you can get access.
Like a pseudo user.
Yep, super user basically, yes. So our emulator got launched. So let's just run this application and then take out the database from our from our emulator right now. Okay, so it's created. So let's just go to this emulator right now. The same thing on my physical device is not accessible, but on the emulator, you can access it. So just go to data. Under data, again, you'll find another folder called as data. And under that, you have to find your, basically, you have to find your base package name. Just scroll down. Okay, this is the ones. So under this, you have something called as databases. So under databases, you have something called as student. So this is basically the database that you have created. So student is a name. So the same name is being reflected here. Now, if you want to check out on your computer, the same thing that you want to check out on your computer, you can just extract this. Just click on this one. This will pull a file and then place it on your desktop or wherever you place it. So I'll just place it on my desktop. Okay, basically this is the file that I was talking about. And now let me just access this file with a third party tool. So basically you get you have an open source third party tool in order to browse the SQLite database now. So let's just see like what is that tool and how can you download. You can just go for like SQLite open helper. I'm sorry, not open helper. SQLite browser. So SQLite browser. So this is the ones. So this is a basically open source thing that you have. So you have these things and you can just download whatever you want. So right now using a Mac, so I can just download this one. If you guys are using Windows, you can use this thing. So I'll just download it. There's a small file. You can just open it and then you can explore the database basically here. And I'll cancel it because I already have it. So this is the SQLite SQLite browser. So I'll click on this SQLite browser and file, open database. And on my desktop, I have student, click on open. So now this is basically the student table which I have. So I have run this application twice. So two rows has been inserted. So the ID is 1 and 2, Ranjit and Ranjit, phone number that I have here. So this is how you can just retrieve the database and then check out. And if you want the database to be private, and if you want the database, you want to do some additions or something here, you can just go ahead and then do this. Like I'll add Acadgild and some number like this, and I can just push this thing basically into the database again. So I can do that also. Push this back to the device. So this tool gives me the access to all these things. So just click on save. Now it is saved. Now if you want, you can just push the database directly. Just use this tool and then push it. Okay, we have just pushed it here.
Just one question. In the database folder, there are two files. One is student and one is student-based journal. It is automatically second file is generated.
Yes, this is the auto-generated file.
What is the purpose? Like it is a backup?
It's not basically the backup. The skeleton and all these things which is required for the SQLite which is there in the system. So that requires these things. So that's the reason why it is created.
Okay. So every folder, like every table, will have similar two files. Basically, the name of that table, and second is journal table.
Yes.
If I say Acadgild, so Acadgild, and then one more file will be generated.
Yes.
Okay. One more question. In our application, just now how we are writing is your name is updated 2 times. But if you want to protect it, not like it is exist in the table, so we cannot write it. So for that purpose, what we should do?
I'm sorry, can you repeat it again?
Duplication work. You see, in the table, column, we see that there are 2 times your name is written because you write the application 2 times. You run the application for 2 times.
Yes.
Okay. So my question is, how we can protect it? Like we should not update the second time.
Basically, it's just an example wherein I've given the insert statement in the onCreate method. So
Okay.
you can have plenty of types, like you can collect the data from the user and insert it to the database. You get the data from somewhere else and then you parse that data and then put it into the database. There are plenty of ways to collect the data and then put it. Here I've just hard coded the data and then putting it in the database. That's all.
Okay. So like if I do mistake, it is up to me because it's a Giggle system.
Yes.
Okay, fine.
Can I do change the permissions? You have a permissions column. In the previous window, you had shown there was a permission window wherein it was written read write. So can we have some tables which are just read only kind of stuff? So
Yes, you can do that. I mean, you can do that in the sense, here programmatically you can you cannot I'm sorry, you can just give the read access here.
right. But how do
Yes.
we define at the back end? Because we still have access to the database via the tool that we were using before.
No, basically you don't have the you'll only have the access when you have like the proper basically it's like if it is your device and if it is your own thing, only then you'll have the access. Not even the device, basically you will not find the rooted devices, so you'll not be able to access the database.
Okay.
So only if the device, basically based on the device. Anyways, you'll not be running things on the emulator. It'll be on a physical device itself. So on the physical device, data is not accessible. So all these things get stored in a specific location called as device sandbox. So that's basically very much secure and that is private for that particular application itself.
What is sandbox? Sorry.
That's basically a place where that is the main portion where we call it as internal memory. So you'll have something called as internal memory and external. External is basically determined as your SD card.
Right.
So that internal memory is a place where all your apps get installed and the important app data gets stored. And that will be private only for that particular application, which has that particular package name.
Oh, okay. So, are you talking about, so when we are trying to remove an app from, no, I'm talking about now when we go to the settings in our phone, so we go to
Yes.
that app thing wherein we can uninstall the application, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
there we have clear data,
Yes.
which is saying that you can take out the personal data, clearing that off.
Yes.
Is it that data you're talking about? I mean, that kind
See,
of data.
clearing personal data is not related to this one. It's related to the next
No,
topic,
I
like
mean,
shared
I'm
preference.
talking about the storage. I'm talking about the storage. Sorry, I'm talking about the storage. So that data where it says your personal data is stored at some end.
Yes. So that is again accessible only through the app, only with the app,
Okay.
not with the other things, only with the app.
Right, but we can have such tables, right? For who's the user. See, if we log into the Facebook, we don't have to log in all the time. It is there, right? The application
Yes.
is there. So it
Yes.
might have its internal tables, which it will be accessing and showing up the updates, right?
Yes, only Facebook app has the access to its own tables, and no other application have the access to Facebook tables.
But we can clear those personal data by going to that uninstall wala settings, right?
Yes, you can clear the data.
So that is accessible. I mean, in a way, it is accessible. We can just remove everything
Yes,
and.
you can remove the data, and that data will not remove the database contents.
You sure? Because I kind of did it once and then again it had asked me when I actually tried to log into the Facebook app, it had asked me from first line saying that, what is the username and what's the password and your.
Yes, the username and password will not be stored inside the database.
So what is
Username
stored
and
in?
Yes, username and password will be stored inside another file that is called as a shared preferences file. Now that file is cleared whenever you click on that clear data.
Oh, okay. So our personal data is not stored in that. It would be something else. Okay, okay, yeah, fine. Thanks.
That's a different file basically. We'll see that in the next session. So
Sure,
what is
sure,
that
sure.
file and how are you storing that data into that file?
Okay, okay, okay. Thanks.
Okay. So now this is for inserting the values. Now let's just see like how to retrieve the values which are inserted into the database. So retrieving values in the sense like we have this complete database. Now right now we have like 3 rows. So basically 2 rows basically. We have 2 rows and those 2 rows has to be retrieved and then shown on our user interface, or we need to retrieve and then do some operation on that. So let's assume that scenario. Now how do we get that particular those things or those table contents into our application will be the next thing. So for that let's just let's just create another question. I'm sorry, another method which handles the retrieving part. So let me just create a method called as method like, we'll keep it as void itself for now. So public void get all students. So get all students. Now at this point of time, I don't want the writable permission or writable access here. We just tell get a readable database. Okay. So I have SQLite database, and here let me just check whether this database has some values or not in the first place. Oh, I'm sorry. So for that, I have something called as cursor, which will determine which will read each and every row, and which will give me the values of each and every row by whichever is pointing to this particular database. Now what we do is we'll just write a query again for that. So I'll just so name it as select all. So the query is similarly the query is the same thing. Select star. Star means select all from. You need to pass the table name. So the table name is going to be table underscore name itself. So select star from. Select everything from this particular table, and I'll execute this table with the cursor object. So I'll just call it as cursor. So right now I have to I have to pass this database object to this particular cursor in order to execute all these things. Now what should I do is basically we have the database object which gets the readable access here. So I'll just tell m database dot raw query, because it's a raw query that we are passing. So I'll just tell raw query, and select statement I'll pass. Now it's asking me for any additional arguments that you want to pass. Now I don't want to pass any additional arguments. So additional arguments, like if you have some conditions, like whatever you want to give it a where clause and all these things. So those things can be provided through this array that you have here. This is basically a string array. So you can pass on all your conditions for that here itself. Now right now I don't have any conditions. Select everything. So I'll just pass null. So cursor will retrieve everything. Now how do I check whether cursor has retrieved at least a single row? At least a single row is basically by checking like cursor dot move to first. So cursor dot move to first. So this basically this method returns true or false. Now what is this true or false returning? So it returns true if there is at least one single row, or if if it moves to the first row, that means at least there is one single row. So if there's one single row, it will just return true. Now if there is one single row, then I have to read that particular row. So in order to read it, what I'll make is like I'll have a do while loop here, because if I have further more rows, let it just continue reading it. So for that purpose, I'll just create a do while loop here, and I'll just tell cursor is already pointing to the first row. Now from first row, I want to get the 0th column elements. So if you know that what is the 0th column elements, you can just get it. Or if you don't know like how many columns are there and how many times you need to get the data and all those things, you can just get the get column count. Or if you have like the column index, so if you want like I want the ID, I have the name of the column, but I want which is the where is that particular column name indexed. So if you want that data, you just pass on like get column index, and then you pass the column name. Or if you know that 0th column is going to return an integer, definitely, so you just tell get int from which column, get int from the 0th column, and I'll just store it inside ID. In the same way, I know that the second column is going to return me a string, so I'll call it as name. So cursor dot get string, the first column. So string phone number, cursor dot get string from the second column, that is 0th column, first column, and second column. So till which point should I get all these things? It's one thing. So till I find that while cursor dot move to next. So while cursor dot move to next will return true. So how does that cursor dot move to next return true? Basically, if it has next rows, it will just return true. If it doesn't have the next row, this will return false. Is that clear? Okay. So now we have collected all the data. Now let's just print the data components that we have collected. Log.e name, or let me call it as ID. And since this is an integer, I cannot directly pass an integer. So I'll just tell string dot value of ID log dot e string dot value of, I'm sorry, it's already a string, so we don't have to pass all these things. Directly pass name log dot e phone number, and then just pass phone number. So we have just printed all these things here. Now, once we have printed, let's just execute these things. Now, once you execute it, okay, I haven't called that particular method. Let me just change it to something else. db dot get, I'm sorry, get all students.
Ranjit, one question. Last time you mentioned we have to close it, but you are not closing.
Sorry?
You have to close the database, na? Every time you have to write, like you mentioned earlier, na?
Okay, haven't I closed it? I've closed. Excuse me, I've closed it here.
Okay, okay, okay. Okay, fine.
Okay. So now if you see, there are like 5 rows. ID, name, okay, phone number I'm not printing here. So if you just append phone number also here, oops, I've added it later, I think. Okay, we have, okay. So we are retrieving these things right now. Now, how do we pass these things as an object, and how can we store it, and how can we use it for later purpose?
Ranjit, one correction. See, you go to that phone number, na? You have to string dot value of that. Then it will print. I think this is why it is not printing, because it is an integer number, na?
No, it's a text basically.
Oh, okay, text. Okay.
Oh, it's, oh, one second. Let me just execute it. One second. Oh, 1 second. It's not printing the phone number. Okay, let me just check. It's not printing the phone number. Just a second, I'm just checking out like why it is not printing. Okay, we have the data in the database. Okay, get readable database, select star from table name. Okay, my cursor is pointing. Select star from all. Cursor moved first. Zero, 1, 2. Sorry guys, just little debugging here, that's all. Okay, it is returning the phone number also. So let's do one thing. Let's just quickly create a structure wherein we can just store all these things and we can just access it. So in order to do that, I'm sorry, as an update, like it is printing the phone number that we have passed. In place of name, we are just collecting the phone number. It is working. It's just returning the number here. So we'll just see like pass it to an object and collect it through that object, and then we'll see like what is happening there. So for that
I think
purpose,
that's because you've already put the indexes too.
No, Ranjit, the log itself is not printing.
I think in terms of name, wherein you have written log.e name, there you've written get string or two. That's the reason instead of name, it is giving us the phone number, not because for the reason.
Oops. Okay, oh, sorry, 1 second. We have string name, get int. We have 1. Okay, name we have 1. Yep, executing it now.
You can store this thing by creating an object, student class, and the object,
I'm
and
sorry?
then populate field. You were talking about how do we store these values. I think we can just create a class, student class, and
Yes, that's what I was talking. You can just create it and we can just, sorry.
populate
You
its
just
value.
create a structure for this one.
Right.
You can just create a student structure here. Okay, we have name, phone number, and all those things. So let's just put
We've not done getter setters.
sorry. Hello. Sorry, you said something, I missed it.
The
I said
get set
we didn't
method.
have the getter setter or the constructors parameterized.
Basically, I just kept it as default, so I can just access it directly, or let me make it the encapsulation way itself. It'll be good as a good practice. Now, I don't have to create anything here. Just go to generate constructor. Let me create an empty default constructor also. And we'll also generate the setters and getters, basically, since it is private. Okay, we have these things ready. So here, I can eliminate this few lines of code here. Now we have the student object, which is ready. So you can just create an array list, basically, if it is returning array list of student objects. Now, since we have the array list of returning student objects, let's just initialize an array list. Okay, so we can just add these objects. So we can just add these objects, and while exiting, we can just return students. So we have the entire objects which we have as an array list. So whoever is calling here can access these things. So let's just create a same array list here. Okay, this will return the entire array list. And from here, if you want to have a list view, so basically we had the adapter views. I don't know whether you have practiced it or not. So adapter views, the custom adapter, I think you guys have understood that. And you guys have done that assignment kind of thing on the adapter views.
Not yet, Ranjit.
Okay, so the same adapter views helps you in doing these things. So you have an array list and you need to create a custom adapter, and only using the custom adapter you can just create all, I mean, you can create different views for different list item, add all those list items and get that view ready.
Okay.
So if you haven't done that, please go through that custom adapters thing. So basically custom adapters is something which will help you in displaying the students data onto a list view. So right now we have about like 6-7 rows. So in your case you might create, I mean, you might create some beautiful UI by adding the edit text and all those things, and you can just search for that particular thing, and then you can just display like list like some 20 or 30 list items in the custom adapter. So this one will just interlink with that custom adapters thing. So there you have the UI and everything coming in picture, and you can use this adapters concept
Okay.
in order to show it on the screen. In order to bring everything onto the screen, you have to use that particular concept. So what you can do is you guys can just go through those things, try to make it, and if you don't get it, just we'll be having sessions again on Wednesday. You can just ask me. So I think the custom adapters, we took up like the whole session, right? So one session and we did that. Just go through that again and try to make it. It'll be easier. It just needs some practice, that's all. Now this is only a little bit of, I mean, little bit of databases. So we also have delete, and we also have like update, upgrade, modifying. So all these things are there again. So we'll just see that in the next session, like how to update and how to upgrade your database, and how to update a row, existing row. So all these things we'll just see in the next session. Any questions? Like till now, you have any questions?
Rajit, I have a question. Like in my mobile, na, there is contacts. It is also storing in the database, or it is some separate schema is there for that?
It is storing in the database, but that database is being synced with your Google account or any other account, for example. So
Okay.
I mean, data will be collected, and that data will be stored inside the database.
From our application, from that we can access the data.
From which application?
Just not like right now I'm making an application that my activity like this. I write my own application, and from there I can access those data.
Yes, you can access it. So basically, if you ask a question like, how can we access contacts data which is private only for the contacts application? You might have that
Yes,
question in your mind.
yes, yes, yes.
So that is basically, again, you have another concept called as content providers. So content providers are something which will help the data to be shared between different apps. So not only your contacts app. So if you take example of Facebook, WhatsApp, I'm sorry, not WhatsApp, Facebook, Gmail, all these apps. So we'll give you the access basically in order to access to their application from other applications.
Okay, okay.
So that there is again one more concept there involved, which is called as content providers. So their job is to provide some content to other applications. The basic functionality or the basic funda is to share the data between other other apps. So if it shares, then again one more concept called as content providers, which we'll be dealing a little later.
Will you be telling us how to sync database from an external source or our own external
We'll not be
database?
doing the sync, but we can fetch the data from the external source and we can put it in the database.
Like an RSS feed or something like that?
Kind of, yes.
Okay. So, can you just show simple example or something like that? Or at least the concept you can run through.
Concept in the sense, I have one of, I think, yes, one of our students itself, they have done an app basically as a final project, and it has been launched in the Play Store. So I can just show that itself. So it's
Yeah.
basically again, fetching things from an external source and putting everything in the app.
No, what I want is like, suppose we have an external source, our own external source, or our own database in website.
Okay.
So just syncing that with the app database. You understood?
Syncing that with the app database. Okay. If it's
Yeah.
syncing that with the app database, then probably what you have to do is like, so you need to exchange some kind of files. Basically, like we use JSON as the exchange format. So you have to take in all the database contents, make it into a JSON formatted. You can make it as a JSON array kind of thing, and then you can send it to the cloud. Then again on your server side, you'll have some script running which accepts the request which is sent by the device and then which sends it to the cloud.
No, not the other side. I'm saying to the app, syncing to the app from external database. Like a magazine, like a magazine or Yahoo News, which syncs external news to your app, Yahoo app.
Yes, it basically brings in the feeds from the external server into our app.
That is also done as JSON.
Yes.
So the JSON is temporarily stored in the mobile and it is read and shown.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Rajit, I have a question. See, I have a database which is in CSV format. Can we link with this database?
CSV format, and you need to link it to what?
This application, this app, like insert now. This is ABCD. You mentioned a photo number. I have physical.
You have to parse your CSV file. You have to
Parse
parse.
is what, like encapsulation kind of thing. It is there. Like in Java, the hibernate is there. Similar to that.
Yes, in the same way, if you have a CSV file, your data in the CSV file has to be parsed first.
Okay.
And if you want to store it in the DB, yes, you can store it in the DB after parsing it.
Okay. Can you show some example, like how you're doing? It will like understanding more.
The CSV example, is it?
Yes. Small 2 rows will be sufficient enough to understand, like. So
I don't have the CSV examples already because whatever is required for us, we have those examples ready. So these are like, it depends on like use cases. So today you will just ask an example and one more ask for one more example. So you don't have all the examples ready at given instance of time in order to just show it to you like that. So if it's a popular ones like parsing JSON and all, we have plenty of examples, and we have our students and all those things done there. So that those examples we can just show you. So one such example is this one. So as well, like parsing some data. So this is basically parsing of data. This is done by one of our students itself. So what happens is, this is the IMDb site, and from the IMDb site you get a JSON, and that JSON data is parsed, and that JSON data is being put as a list view here. So I think one of you were asking like the news feeds. So this is almost similar to the news feeds. That'll be a news feed, and this is a movie review feed that you get from the server.
Okay,
So
this is done for the date. I mean, this is stored in the database, or the JSON is shown as such.
See, we will return a raw. I mean, the server will give us a raw JSON.
The server
will give us a raw JSON. That raw JSON is being parsed, and this parsed data is being kept inside some kind of an array list, a custom array list kind of thing, and that list is again given to the list view with a custom adapter, and that custom adapter will take care of displaying this in the user interface.
Okay, there is one question, like if the app is closed, the JSON is destroyed, right?
Yes, it's gone.
So every time I have to be on the internet to get the...
Yes.
Okay.
But if you want the older ones to be stored onto your, in your app itself, then you can create a database locally, and whatever you fetch, you put it into the database, and you fetch it, and then again display it.
Okay, understood.
If you don't want to do it, then you can just leave it as it is. Any more questions?
Not related to this, but to the assignments.
Sorry?
Not related to this, but to the assignments.
Okay, which one?
Yeah, so I have just one question. How do we reuse the same set of properties in various XMLs? How do I reuse the same type of properties? So font size, font type, whatever. The size, the margins, all those things. So do we put it into a style and we name it and then we reuse it in different...
I think we did it right. So you just go to this values folder, and you put everything in this values folder, and wherever you need it. So basically, essentially, if you just see here, padding right. So padding right has some value in my dimensions.xml file. So activity underscore margin horizontal something here. So it's given as 16 dp. So the 16 dp is defined in one place, but we are reusing it in multiple places.
Right.
So these things are being fetched from that margin. So in the same way, if it is a string or if it is a color, anything, you can put it inside the values folder, and then you can reuse it in multiple places wherever you want.
Yeah, but can we not consolidate it at one place, saying that the size would be this, the color would be this? Now that we are having in color XML, dimension XML, and style XML, instead of having it at one place, give it a name and reusing it at again, like the paddings are there, padding right, top, bottom is there, the font size, the font color.
That's what we're doing here, right?
No, but we are reusing it. It's not, we are just giving it a name and then we're using it from different files. Is there not a way of giving it a name, saying that the size would be this, just not in dimensions.xml, but also of colors.xml or styles.xml?
Okay. So
And
everywhere in your app, you want to use the same size, the same dimension. That is what you mean to say?
No, like for if we have some app which has a lot of text fields or some set of fields which are very commonly used throughout your app. So we would need to have the look and feel of the control similar throughout, right? So for that, we need to have the same padding up, down, then this font, the background color, those things, just giving it a name and reusing. I think it will be. Can it be done through style or?
Yes, it has to be done through styles.
So here, can we have the font size mentioned?
See here,
Or it
under
has to
styles,
be.
you need to give you need to give which style are we going to use, and that style has to be mentioned under your manifest also. So if you see here, the entire apps theme is going to be based on this one, like app theme. So app theme is again defined here, like this is going to be the app's theme, and the primary color of the app is going to be this one, and the primary dark color for the app is going to be this one. So if you observe this application, you have this dark color here, and you have this another color here. So these things can be changed here. So in one place, as you were telling, so my entire apps theme is going to be the same way. So this is blue and this is dark blue. And I want the same color to be present all over my app. So you can just do it. If you don't want to do it, so just come here and then just change it to some color. Okay. Okay, this is my primary color right now. And if I execute my app, primary color or the primary theme of my app itself is going to change. So in the same way, whatever you want throughout your app, you can just define it in your styles.xml.
No, not throughout the app. I'm talking about say text fields. We define few things. Say the font size, the font color, the background color of those text fields, the padding up and down on the sides. So if we want to consolidate in one go and reuse it, like if we have a method and we are calling that method from various files wherever we want to use it.
Yes.
You're getting what my question is, right?
See, your
Because
question, I got your question.
What colors is a more dimensions. If there is a way of having defining all these three properties at one go and reusing it in our activity main.xml.
Yes, that is where your themes come into picture. So your theme basically, it can be only for, it can be only for a single activity, or it can only be for a single field, or it can only be for the entire application.
Ranjit is asking, can we do it in one single XML, like style.xml?
Yes, you can do it in a single XML. So basically, if you just take an example like I have a text view here, and I'll have the same kind of text views in like 4 different activities.
Right.
And now this text views size should be some 25 SP, and this text views what do you call it? Background color is some red color, and padding between all the cases is like some 10 dp. So that's the style that I want for this text view throughout my 4 different activities. Is that what your question is?
Right.
She's asking
Okay.
like.
That is what her question is. So this text field, you're using it like 10 different ways, and I don't want to define each and every single field in each and every text view. I'll just give a single name, and all 3 should be present in that single name itself.
No, my question is to have multiple different kind of text fields, all having the same properties, saying the color, the dimensions, the background color, the style, and reusing it in various text fields that we introduce in our application.
Ranjit, can I explain? See, what she is asking us, instead of putting at dimension activity horizontal margin, can I have at style / activity horizontal margin? At style /
Okay. So one second. I was talking about the same thing. So what I said is like, you have this, I just took an example basically. So you were telling like you have 3 different views, and all these three different views will have some commonalities.
Right.
Correct? I have
Right.
three text views. So all three text views will have the same dimension, will have the same font size, will have the same font color, same font background. So these four fields are something which is fixed for all my four text views or from four views.
Yes.
And now I don't want to mention all these four things in all four different places.
Right. It becomes
Correct?
very heavy. I mean, when you look at
Yes.
the code. Yeah.
And for that, what you're telling is, I'll just, I mean, is there a way to create a single file? I'll put all this four in that